So nice to meet all of you. I'm Ethan. I wish I could be there in person, but happy to try and do fun remote stuff for you. So hopefully you can, the presentation is loading, I've been told, so I will give it a second to get up on screen. There we go. We're going to talk through some stuff, and then I want to try to do a live demo if you can see the screen well enough, and then I want to answer your questions. I have been playing around with, I've been an AI adjacent for a very long time. For those of you who don't know, I run Wharton Interactive, which builds simulations for teaching. I'm an entrepreneurship professor for teaching entrepreneurship and innovation. They're really cool sims. You should absolutely use them. I have an entire class where I don't do anything but push a button, and it's my highest rated class, and everyone just plays the games. So I've been playing in this space for a while. But I'm going to talk not so much about that, although it will come in, as talk about the other thing I've been working on, which is AI and teaching and why they intersect. So let's first talk about ChatGPT. Let me give you my 3 principles to think about when you're thinking about AI and teaching in a business school. And that all the images, by the way, that you see are all AI generated. We'll play with some of that later too, but it's undetectable, it's ubiquitous, and transformative. What do I mean by that? Well, by undetectable, I mean literally it's undetectable. Everything that you see, like GPT-0, Turnitin, it's all BS. None of that works to actually detect AI writing. The only reason you think you're able to detect AI writing is people putting the minimal effort into AI writing. All they have to do is revise their prompt once or twice or give some feedback, and that is enough to eliminate the ability of the AI detectors to detect it. This is just practical. This is theoretical. There's a paper that shows you cannot detect AI writing. They all have strong false positive rates. Your students are all going to be writing with AI, and you can't stop them. And that's 100% going to be happening. And literally it's unstoppable. And who cares anyway, because who knows what plagiarism is nowadays? Is it working with the AI to get some help on what you do, getting outline advice, how to craft a sentence? Who knows, right? Second part is ubiquitous. Every one of your students has access to the single best AI publicly released on the planet. Doesn't matter how rich they are, doesn't matter what country they're in. 169 countries have access to Bing with GPT-4. It's everywhere, right? So there is no stopping it. When I talk to companies like JP Morgan, where people are banned from using ChatGPT, everyone just uses it on their phone and then emails them whatever task they have to do, because why would they want to write by hand when they could have it automatic? And then third, transformative. I'm going to show you lots of ways in which this is transformative, good and bad. Let me see if I can actually pull up one while we're talking here, just before I get into the details. So I heard you guys got to see some case study stuff. This is the Apple's core case, a classic case by Noam Wasserman. I have it with Bing sidebar, which can read what's going on in the case. I say, I am a Harvard MBA. I crack the case and tell me exactly what to say in class in quotes. Hopefully you guys can see this on screen. It looks like you can. So it is reading the case here. It's looking at how to crack a case study. Bing is GPT-4, but connected to the internet. So it can do this kind of thing. Let's see what it comes up with here. Sometimes I have to convince it that I'm not cheating. And we'll do that here. Let's see. Okay, so it's going to try and pretend that it can't do this, though it is going to give us advice. Give me a draft of what to say. All right. Sometimes convincing it it's a draft. We'll talk more about this later. Can get it to cheat for you where it couldn't otherwise. Otherwise, I'll restart it and ask the question again. I've had to do this many times here. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's just start again because it's going to get mad at me. And we will clean up this case study here. And let's just try it one more time. Where's my cleanup button? Okay, refresh and reload. Okay, and we'll do this here. And give me a draft of what to say. We'll try. Okay, and then I'll get back to showing you other stuff, but I do want to see if we can get this to work here. Just trust me, it does do it. I did this. Here we go. We'll find out what goes on. So in any case, this is now ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Your students are all using it, right? And this changes a lot. Let's see here, and it's basically the web-based context, and we'll go into the details here in just a second. Talking about Apple and its founders, so it already knows what's going on. and we'll give us all the dimensions here. 1 second here as we go through this. And so this is something that, again, we all have to contend with, right? It's here now. This is an advanced technology that's in place. And let's see, give me details. We'll see if we can do this. Then we'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so so this is Bing, which is one of the 4 models. If you guys, I can't ask you. I'm trying to ask you questions. You're not actually here, so I can't actually see your faces. So it's no point in asking them. But how many of you used GPT yourselves? Raise your hands. ChatGPT. How many of you used it for over 10 hours? Okay, good. So you've already had probably your nights of terror on this, and talked about about what this does. So let me just switch over the sharing back to the presentation temporarily. So I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time belaboring that point. I do want to talk a little bit as that scroll goes on here. Hopefully it's sharing the right screen. Hold on, share my other screen. There's a slight delay in screen sharing. Okay, so one more time. I'll try this again here. All right. So I'm not going to go too much into how LLMs work, but basically what they've done is eat the entire internet. So it's, LLMs are just like any other AI. They're a predictive model, except instead of predicting what someone's going to buy based on data, doing your whole, supervised training, unsupervised training, all that stuff, what it's done is eaten the entire internet and created these vectors of meaning associating different concepts together. So what it does technically is predict the next word in a sentence, right, or in a set of next token in a set of phrases. So the best thing about AI is the ability to learn is the most likely, then predict, then make. So we know how these things work technically, but everything seemed okay until November when things started to get really weird. Which is when ChatGPT and GPT 3.5 were released, and suddenly we have a model that is doing things that we don't expect it to be doing. So these are the scores on the bar exam, the GRE quantitative, the GRE verbal, for GPT 3.5, which is the original chat, and GPT-4, which came out about a month and a half ago. And as a reminder, this is not the percent right on the test, it's the percent of human test takers beaten by this. So it beats 86% of people in the bar exam, 80% of people in GRE quantitative, 99% in GRE verbal, just passed the neuroscience qualifying exam. Like every dimension that you think about, it is exceeding performance at a sort of a very large scale and growing quickly. I often tell people the AI you're using today is the worst AI you're ever going to use. So you should be thinking about that piece as well. And so this is kind of weird, right? Like we don't expect this kind of behavior. Nobody quite knows what's happening. The leading contender, at least Stephen Wolfram's theory, is at a certain scale of these LLMs, what they've managed to do is accidentally recalculate figure out the structure of sort of human thought and human speech, and now can replicate that. But we don't really know the answers to that. So we don't know why they're quite as able as they are. There's debate over whether this is emergent or real, but for all practical purposes, this AI stuff is incredibly powerful and does pretty crazy stuff pretty easily. And in terms of models, there's 3 major foundational models out there that you want to pay attention to. Those are OpenAI's GPT models, Google's models, and Anthropic's model. There's some open source stuff, but it's nowhere close to the right level at this point. Of the models that are out there that you might want to use, GPT-4 is the most powerful, and there's basically 2 ways to access it: GPT Plus, which you could pay access to for $20 a month, or Bing in creative mode does the same thing. Google updated their system. It's still terrible. Don't use it for anything if you have access to a better system. Anthropic is super interesting now, though, because they have a system that, as of yesterday, it can ingest 100,000 tokens. That's 75,000 words. So I could paste an entire, like you could paste, and they did, all of Great Gatsby into it and change one sentence and say what sentence seems out of place, and it will tell you. So it will read everything, an entire textbook, and give you answers on it. So that's an interesting system. It's about as able as 3.5, GPT 3.5. But if you're not using GPT 3.4, you should probably be doing that. So here's my 3 ways that you should think about leveraging AI as an instructor. The first is to expect more for students. The second is do better pedagogy for less work. And the third is transform teaching. So let's dive into these. On expecting more from students, this is my syllabus. All my classes are now AI mandatory. In fact, I have completely changed the way I'm kind of teaching as a result. So it's required. I warn people they're responsible for the output. a lot of you know about the hallucination problem, like AI tends to make a lot of stuff up. You shouldn't take that too seriously for two reasons. One is, obviously, you still make your students accountable, but also that problem is going away. So in the neuroscience study I told you about, BARD, which is Google's model, hallucinated 44% of the answers. GPT 3.5 hallucinated 22% of the answers. GPT-4 hallucinated 2% of the answers. So hallucination rates are dropping very, very rapidly. So humans make a lot of mistakes too. So I'm not sure whether we want to hang our hat on that AI makes mistakes as much, but I make people accountable for their end product that they're producing. I make them accountable for, acknowledging their use of AI. At the end of any AI assignment, they have to list their prompts and a paragraph of what worked for it, and try to get people to use the tool appropriately. But I now require it in all my classes. Just as one example, one of my entrepreneurship classes, people had to come up with a theoretical product design and create and test a prototype and write an outline. And afterwards, I make them come with a product design, build the product using laser 3D printers, build a working app, create a marketing material, create a website, do design work, create demo products, create images, and this is like the end result after 4 weeks is like people have working games with working websites and board games. And like, you could just ask for infinitely more work. I no longer take stuff that isn't well written as assignments. I assign people 200 pages to write instead of like 10. Just the nature of work has changed very dramatically as a result of this. And you need to think about that too. What are you assigning that's more or better or different? The second is that you could do better pedagogy for less work. And I think the easiest way to do this is to demo some of this to you and talk about it that way. So let me try and pull up my little demo here. So we're going to switch over. While I get that set up, I actually want to show you one more thing on Bing, just for fun here. So I'm going to pre-type it in so that there's less of an issue. Okay, so here's a fun example of Bing at work. Let me see if I can share. Okay, so I was showing you the Bing sidebar, which connects to it. I just typed it in while we're waiting here for this to go up. But it says, hopefully you'll see, look up the latest trends in sneaker designs for 2023, summarize them, create an on-trend design, describe it, pass the description to DALL-E to show a prototype. So we'll have Bing work on this for a second for us, and then I'm going to show you some of the ways to make teaching easier as a result of this. But I just want to show you what these multimodal systems can do here. Okay, so it's going to tell us what the trend lines are, soccer-inspired sneakers. You guys can read this okay-ish? Sort of nod of heads generally? Okay. All right, close enough. And so it's doing all the research we need. Obviously, we can check the sources. They're getting better and better over time. But if you're asking your students to do a research report, this does the research report for them, obviously. So let's see here. And it's, let's see. And let's see what it comes up with here. So now it's going to generate an image. Again, one prompt is a product design effort. Oh, and by the way, interesting thing about this while we wait for this to pull up, there's a bunch of research papers that have just come out that show that this works enough like a human that you can actually do pricing tests on it and economic studies. It reacts with the same kind of biases. So if you can actually use this as I have my students do interviews of the AI. So there we go. Completely original design, never existed before, completely generated by AI here in 2 seconds, right? So I think you could ask a lot more for your students in classes, a lot more practical use for things than they probably were able to do before. So let me switch over to GPT-4 for this. I have this here. All right. While we wait for GPT Plus to go up, hopefully you'll see this in a second. So I want to give you an example of this here while we get this going. So let me show you some really nuts stuff in just a moment here. And so what I've done is a prompt, and I'll make sure you guys have access to all these prompts. This is a prompt about creating explanations. So it turns out explaining things in many different ways to students is helpful. It's part of the reason why cases can kind of be limited, because you're basically giving people one explanation or one example. What you actually want to do is give them lots of examples, lots of analogies. So I wish I could ask you guys here, what's a concept we want explained by the AI? Somebody else something, or I think I could hear you. Maybe not. Or no one say anything. Fine. All right. You guys are either boring or I can't hear you. I'm just gonna go with something random. Let's go with
Somebody
let's go
said
with
network effect.
Network effect. I love it. Okay. And by the way, what you see here is basically a program, right, in prose. I said you're an experienced teacher, and it's asking the questions that I asked it to ask. So our audience is going to be college students. Okay, so now it's been instructed to come up with an explanation for, like, here it's going to come up with an explanation for us, right? That's pretty solid. And then it's going to explain network effect. I asked it to give 2 clear examples. So now it's a pretty nice example of Facebook on that. Now, I will tell you, AI is inconsistent. It'll do different things every time. I like the Esperanto example here. And here's some analogies, right? Pretty great, right? So I've noticed, I don't know if you've seen the same thing, students have stopped raising their hand as much in class because they'd rather ask the AI to answer questions for them than do it themselves, right? But this helps you as a teacher. You could do better explanations here, right? One way or another here. And some of these are a little less accurate than others. So there's still room for you as an instructor to make this happen, right? But that's an example of that. Now, another example of something we don't do enough as professors, I'll stop this here, is called interleaving. So people learn best when you mix topics together. We have too much tendency in business classes, teach a topic, then teach the next topic. That's not actually the best way for people to remember things. Instead, you want people to remember things by connecting concepts together, right? So this prompt helps you do that. You could say, let's say, what are we teaching right now? We're teaching network effects. And what we were teaching before, what was the past topic we want to include in our lesson? What's something we could talk about here? Let's talk about, give me something. What's the topic? No, all right. I heard you before. I don't know if I can hear you guys again. All right. I'm not hearing anything from anyone there. So, yep. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Sneakers.
Let's do product design. Because let's have it be like school product, like things here. The audience, we'll do college again. We could do middle schoolers if we want to. And now it's going to come up with a it's going to come up with ways of integrating these 2 topics together, right? This is actually pretty useful. So now we're interleaving stuff. So this helps you as a professor be able to integrate sets of topics back and forth. I have similar things to help you generate quizzes on tests. And again, I'll provide you guys all of this. Oh, here's an example for tests, by the way. Let's just do this here. We'll do one more, and then I'm going to show you a couple other things really quickly. So this is about creating tests. And it turns out there's actually an art to creating good test questions. So this integrates the research together. This was created by my wife, who's a doctorate in education, and we worked together on this set of stuff on this one. So we'll test network effects. And for which audience, and we'll do college students. And of course, you could do a better job here, but now it's going to create multiple choice questions here. By the way, you could do this literally off of a document. So I could open up a PDF in Microsoft Bing, type in this request, and it will create a multiple choice test on whatever document I'm looking at, or summarize it, or do whatever else I want to do here. It's going to try, again, you'll want to read through all of this to make sure it's correct and the details are right. But this, again, makes life much easier. By the way, obviously it grades, and then it's going to give us the answer key, all of this here. I wanted to show you some of the capabilities you may not have seen in this system while it does this, which is just to show you some kind of cool stuff. The new version of ChatGPT now includes detailed, let me pull something up here. You can see all my weird stuff I do work on. Okay, so now you can actually, and as of next week, everyone should have access to this. This is Code Interpreter. It can actually create and run Python codes and take information. So what I did here is I just uploaded a CSV file of VC investments, and I said, here's the file, and figured out all the details of what the file was. And I said, okay, and if you'll notice, I said, create visualizations, descriptive analyses that will help me describe the data. So it starts creating visualizations for me. And then it gives me the descriptive stats and all the details. And I say, how about doing a free regressions to give me information? So now it starts running regression analyses on its own. And I'm like, okay, here's the results of the regression. I'm like, can you check if there's outliers? Can you conduct some regression testing? So now it does Cook's distance, it does a Durbin-Wilson statistic, it creates QQ plots, it does a sensitivity analysis on the results, And then it starts to, and by the way, the whole time what it's doing is it's writing code just and running code spontaneously for all this. And now it's doing a sensitivity analysis for removing plots, points of the plots, and redoing plot information on this, and just giving me all the results. And it'll give me a CSV file, whatever I want as a result, right? All of that, it creates all of this material sort of spontaneously now. So if you're and it gives me downloadable documents. I asked it, by the way, to create a PHAC document for me where the numbers fit better with R squared. It did that for me also. Which I think is going to be ominous also with what we're doing. But the short version is that I think that if you are not thinking very hard about how you're teaching and how you're teaching people how to code and how you're thinking, like that is all transforming pretty quickly. So that is my very quick overview of some of that. Let me try and get back to showing you a little bit more here. The demo piece. I've got some takeaways that I will make sure that we send to you so you get to see this stuff and see more details. But I just want to give you the last couple of quick things to just think about, hopefully on screen. Okay. So the last thing is about new world of teaching. And I mentioned before, I make games for teaching. So like I've been spending years building these really awesome games that do teaching stuff. You can access them now. Building this elaborate gaming platform, Wharton's plowed a lot of money in. I have a team of 14 people. There's video, like it's really cool is everything includes introductory videos. So all the lessons are built into the game of all these successful venture capitalists who talk and entrepreneurs. And then what we do is we built a fake Gmail. So you actually like get actual emails from people. This plays out over the course of 6 class sessions. People get email messages from people. They make all these choices. We even built a fake Zoom. So you actually have Zoom calls with characters in the game and make decisions that matter in that case. And there is, we have all of this, like, it ends with this big pitch and this grading built in. You get 35 pages of feedback. There's scoring. There's all this kind of super cool information. 98% of people complete this when we do it. 3,000 instructors have signed up to do it. 98% of people say they've learned that they can't do a class again. Low level pitch for this. It's super cheap. I don't actually make any money off it, but I think everyone should use it because I've spent a lot of time building it. But if you want to use any of these sims, Wharton Interactive. What occurred to me, the reason I'm showing you this is not as an ad, but it's because I thought, what happens if I use GPT-4? And so I just typed in, I want to do deliberate practice about how to do negotiations. You're my teacher. Simulate a detailed scenario, which I have to have in negotiations. You're one party, I'm the other. After I get a response, give me details of what the other party says. Grade my response. Make it harder or easier depending on how I do. And this is what it did, right? It actually started to play out a full scenario for me with grading based on a single paragraph prompt, right? And so I was like, gee, oh my God, right? So like, this is a huge issue to worry about. We don't have a lot of time just to talk briefly on the ethics side. There are lots of sort of concerns. You probably know them already, about the training of these models, about the reuse of these models, about whether you're okay with how companies are training them, about whether or not AI is going to murder us all. But I think all of these things are important to acknowledge. People are using AI anyway, right? So, it's something we can talk more about. And then in longer term adjustment, right? I think we have to double down on building knowledge for our students. We have to be smart about when to use this technology and when not to. When are we banning in classrooms? Or are we not doing that? And I think we need to think about moving away from lectures, which were always a bad way to teach, and maybe from cases as well, though people at Harvard get mad at me about that. But and I think about more about what are we doing in class to do really meaningful experiences, and how do we have more tutoring and learning outside of class? And I think this is really exciting, but also kind of a little bit frightening. And I think your students are also trying to figure out guidance here. So just as a reminder, billions of people have access to this, right? I'm spending all my time thinking about what prompts can I send people, so people in Uganda or India or Bangladesh or Brazil or my home state of Wisconsin can type prompts in and get access to education. It's pretty exciting, right? And I recommend everyone try AI everywhere. I love that somebody, you raised your hands that you've been using chat for 10 hours. I think that's what you have to do. And that's sort of it for me. I've got a bunch of guides on oneusefulthing.org, which is my little weird blog site. I've got a few SSRN papers on this, and I'll share some of those with you also. I think we should all be sharing prompts with each other. I wish there was a community for doing that. There isn't yet. So if someone is part of one, hook me up. But otherwise, I'm here to answer questions in the whatever minutes we've got left.
Let's take some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So just a question on how then do you end up grading these things? If you get a 200-page thing from that's been generated, um, and and yeah, do we just grade prompts or what do we grade?
I think it's a really interesting question, right? And I think we're in. So I will tell you, I have a colleague who has secretly tested AI grading versus his best trained TAs, and the AI beats the TAs in every measure, including consistency. So I mean, one option is secretly use the AI to grade this. I'm not doing it yet, but man is attempting. I think you can use prompts as part of the angle to look at the effort that went into this. I think that you can do something where you're looking at part of this is part of the thinking process, and you're asking for some personal reflection at the end, which is what I often do. Like I ask them to produce all the content, but then most of the grade is on the personal reflection. How does it come together? How does it work? You could do a final oral presentation about this material. It's one of many things we have to rethink. Like you can't, this is a general purpose technology. It affects everything, right? So we can't just do a little piece of this and be like, okay, we're going to make people do this work, but then we're going to grade the old fashioned way. That doesn't work either. This is a general change.
Is it, so there's a question about, how do we teach the other technical stuff now that ChatGPT can do it? So ChatGPT can program Python or write SQL. So do we still teach SQL? Do we still teach Python? Or do we teach it more or less?
Well, I can't code in Python. I've written about 20 Python programs in the last week through all sorts of stuff. So I don't know what that means. Like, I mean, I could put a program in BASIC, the last programming language I learned, ask it to convert it to COBOL or Python or Lisp, or it doesn't matter, right? So nobody has an answer for you here. I will tell you that I've been CC'd on many complaining emails from students saying, why are we still being taught to code as if ChatGPT didn't exist? Like, give me a rationale for why I need to do it that way. So I personally would say, okay, you at least have to acknowledge this thing is real, right? So I personally think we probably are going to teach, is coding really going to be the big skill of the future at this point? I have my doubts. Again, this is the worst AI you're ever going to use, right? And so I don't know, but I do think you have to acknowledge it. So maybe you have some code on your own and code with the AI. Have people reflect on the QA experiences. Tease it from the beginning that we're going to learn to code on our own because we believe the fundamentals are super important. But then for the last half of class, you'll have an AI coding partner and you'll reflect on that experience. Again, I don't have the answer for you. I do think that programming just became a much less interesting job, and I mean, or maybe much more interesting job, but much less of the key to the future than it was maybe 8 months ago.
Can ChatGPT, from your experience, effectively teach you how to prompt ChatGPT?
Yes, so there's a lot of emphasis on this idea of like prompt engineering. And again, for all those of you who've been using this for 10 hours, you probably already figured this out, but like 80% of prompting is just having a conversation with the thing. I'm writing a report. What should I be asking you to get the most help from you? And it will help you. You gave me these paragraphs, it's not quite what I wanted. Could you do it again, but ask me in a different kind of way? Like prompting is not magic. And by the way, prompt engineering is going to go away. This thing already guesses intent. Like it does crazy stuff. Let me just see if I can pull up one of my favorite weird examples of this. Let me see if I can pull this up, because this kind of stuff is like, let me see if I can find it here easily, and share it on the screen or not. Okay, let's see here. Maybe not easily, but like you can literally say to it, which is what I do when I'm demoing it for people. I'm like, hey, I'm standing here in front of a bunch of KPMG consultants. Do something that will impress them. Right, write code that will impress them. And it's like, great, they'd probably be really interested in a K nearest neighbor approach that does that, and then it writes the code to do it. It's like, you haven't given me data yet, so I'll create some simulated data and I'll show you the graphs and how it works. Like that is just like something it does now. Let me see, I actually did this yesterday, like I said. Let me see if I can find this here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this was just kind of fun, just to give you an example here. So I literally did this while doing a demo the other day. I was like, maybe I'll pull up on screen. Create something that, hopefully you'll see in a second. You don't quite yet. There we go. Create something that KPMG consultants would find interesting with code. Sure, I'll create a financial forecasting model. And here I've created simulated revenue and a revenue forecast. And I'm like, give me something else. Okay, how about a churn prediction model? And, again, it's writing code for each of these things, right, to make them happen. And by the way, when there's errors, it fixes them. Oh, there's a mistake. I forgot. This tries to create 2 informative features, 2 redundant features. We specify only 3 features. So I fixed the problem. Oh, no, here's another problem. I didn't create the right data frame. Now I've solved that problem for you. And then let's train the data network and split the data into training and non-training. Like, it's doing all of this, right? Like, visualize it. Great. Here's the visualization. Here's the confusion matrix. Do another cool idea. Great, let's do a test sentiment analysis with naive Bayes classifier trained on a small sample data set of sentences. Like, this is just like doing stuff, right? So I don't think it's that hard. Prompting is that hard or magical.
I want to go back on this coding example. If all the code that is going to be created from this point on is made by AI, AI is trained currently on code that's been written by people. Isn't it just going to regurgitate the same old stuff over and over again, or is it actually going to improve? So my question is, perhaps we're looking at the best AI we're going to see right now, and it's only going to get worse because it has nothing new to train on.
So maybe. I mean, I don't have definitive answers. There's a whole bunch of papers that suggest ways of AI creating synthetic training data for AI. I also would say it acts creatively. Like, I asked it to show me something eldritch for some reason, which is a $10 word for like freaky associated with the H.P. Lovecraft. So it's like, oh, you went something eldritch. I'm going to create a Markov chain generator using the text from H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu and create a new text that sounds creepy. And it said it won't make a lot of sense because it's a Markov chain generator, but that'll just add to the creepy eldritch nature of it, right? Like, it does do creative tasks, right? It finds associations we won't find. It's not just regurgitating code. So, on one hand, yes, right? What happens when it runs out of training data? I don't know. It's already programming at a fairly high level, but it's not as high as winning, code contests, elite coder contests yet. Like, maybe this is the best, but every piece of data we have is that there's still some juice left in the training system. And so maybe this is as good as it gets. That's fine. You can make that bet. I don't know. I don't have the answers on that. But I think it's hard to make the bet and say, this is definitely as good as it's gonna be. And it can't come with novel ideas, because it clearly can.
So here's a simple question, but maybe not a simple answer. You clearly spent more time on this than 2 or 10 hours, so you have a good sense of its capabilities. Based on your familiarity with its skills, what human skills and jobs going forward do you think are most useful, and what are most obsolete?
That's rough. Okay, so let's not talk about jobs. Let's talk about tasks, right? Let's use the modern definition that we have, right? So there's 3 studies on tasks and AI exposure and tasks. Those are Rob Siemens and company has a cool paper at NYU. There's a Goldman Sachs study. I don't know who made it, and then Daniel Rock and team have a group out with OpenAI. All of them find the exact same thing, which is extremely high correlations between tasks exposed to OpenAI's approach to large language models and creativity, income, and education. Basically, it's almost linear correlation. So the disruption level is going to be very high. The question is, what do we do then, right? So the short version is we hand off the worst part of our jobs to these things, and we get happy. That assumes that they kind of stop at the current level, which is sort of the 90th percentile level for things. If they keep getting better, or 75th, depends on the area, 50th percentile in some areas. What do we do if it keeps getting better? I don't know, right? I think there's a wider question here about, what is it not good at? And the analogy I give people is thinking of this as software is a really bad idea. It doesn't work like software. Software doesn't argue with you. It doesn't forget what it can do. It doesn't give you radically different results. Hopefully, all the time you use it. It is ultimately software is documentable. This is who knows what it's doing, right? It's a person, right? The easiest way to think of it, don't think of it as like sentient, but it's a person. It does person tasks. You talk to it like a person. It works like a person. You all now have staff members, right? You just got a whole bunch of RAs that'll do instant work for you. You've got a whole bunch of TAs that'll do instant work for you. That's the way you have to think about this thing. And as a result, that makes it scarier from a replacement perspective. Like, what does this do? Everyone now has 20 staff members working under them. How do I think about that situation? And so I don't have easy answers on this. I don't think anyone does. I think that we have to get our students ready for a wave of disruption that's heading their way. I think my students are going to go into consulting. Our early studies are showing like the effect on consulting jobs, right? 30 to 80% performance improvements on many consulting tasks. 30 to 80%. Steam power was 18 to 22%, How do we deal with this? I don't know. I don't have the answers. But I think we should all be kind of, we're academics. We'll be safe for a while. Education is going to be the same. It will change how we do it, but people still want it. But I don't know about the white collar jobs we're planning people for. I don't have easy answers.
What you said?
On that happy note, I also think it's really cool and fun, and everyone should play with it a lot.
So we're going to move on to the next talk, and by my colleague Chiara Faranato. Ethan, Chiara is actually going to tell us that we could still teach data science with case method, right? So she's going to try to convince us that the HBS cases are still going to be useful.
I'm sure she's right. Thank you all so much.